Welcome back to session 2 with Carin van Niekerk. Carin, thank you for joining me again. You home educate a child with special needs. What does the term special needs mean?
Yeah, special needs is actually an umbrella term for learning difficulties and developmental difficulties, behavioral, emotional. But I think what we really can take out of that is that it's a child with particular requirements for education. So it ties in nicely with being able to tailor make your education. It's a perfect fit if you think about it. If I can just expand on the benefits of the way that you can tailor make and fit this with the particular requirements for your child. What's so lovely about being at home is the possibility to put it all in context. I know I go on and on about that, but if you can just get that if there's no context, there's no understanding. Once you package something within an activity or within real life, as OTs, we have been taught to, you look at an activity and you analyze the activity into components of function, and all components of function you wouldn't even believe necessary for any activity, whether that be shaving or writing. And I found that almost parents go from that avenue. They try to teach their children components needed for a certain function, whereas it's almost parts, teaching the parts for the whole, whereas the child actually needs the whole to make sense of the parts. So it's an interchange between the two of them. If you... My boy, the other day, we were on our way somewhere, and he was busy explaining to me what he's at the moment doing in one of his games. And he used the word vulnerable. Oh, wait, pause. I said, what does vulnerable mean? And within the context and the interest of his lovely game, he loves that game, he could exactly explain to me what vulnerable means. It would have taken me, if I started with the part, let's say the part being the word, and trying to connect it with the context, the other way around. So we tried to start from the parts, tick all the parts, now they can do that, so now they can do the function. Whereas we should do that interchange, that dance between wholes and parts, if you can understand more in that way. Also with language, I find for me it doesn't work to start with a purely a language program. I've bought so much language programs, and we start with lists. But the moment, that's why I love read aloud so much. The moment you do read aloud, you get to do grammar. Yes. It's whole language learning. It makes sense. If you do equations, if you do science, it just shows up everywhere. I do agree. You can't just do baking and think your child will be fine with math. I understand that. But if you work parts and whole, with my second oldest child, I had to pause with fractions. We had to pause there. I had to go and buy different measuring cups, different measuring spoons, until he got the idea of fractions. So I think context is so important, especially with a special needs child. They need the concrete to hook all the abstract things. And also you get to work multisensory, so you don't just work one avenue. You try to convey information only using the ears, and that's a very difficult avenue to use anyway. So you get to use multisensory avenues, pathways to the brain, and the more avenues you use, the less time you need for memory or repetition. Okay, so you will find once a child has the context, they almost immediately have their understanding, and there's no repetition in that place. Certain children, most of us, you are either a person who worked really well with parts or with the forest instead of the wood, after the trees. So depending on that as well, but the way we gift information is often bit by bit by bit. We see it as a computer having to be fed the bits. But a child's brain our brains are different. That's not brain education. And also, what slots in almost exactly with that is a child's interest. Like with my boy, that's his interest, that game. He loves that game. So he would make it his business to know what vulnerable means. That's a simple example, but it was so perfect for me to see that happening. Cain and Cain, they wrote down 12 brain, mind principles for learning. And one of those says that all students have the capacity to better comprehend when their interests, their purposes, and their ideas are engaged and respected. You know what, Anelle? It's often not as easy to find your child's interest. Some children have this lovely, they love rugby, and you can start with rugby and just, build on that. Or sometimes it's not as easy. And that's why I said it often takes a lot of time to really suss this child out, investigate, find the real interest. And it's almost a matter of respecting that interest, if you like it or not.
No, that's the thing, especially if it's an interest that is not your interest.
Yeah. I think that's what I meant with respecting the interest, because all knowledge are connected, and once you start with the interest, you have the ability to expand on that. You will get to what you want to, have them learn, but first I think just respect the interest and build on that. Tailor-made education really makes it possible to cater for the particular requirements of children with special needs. Just to make it a bit more practical, this would also be a good place to start. If you do realize your child has special needs, I often tell parents, you knew this, you knew something, there's something, especially the mommies, they know. And it helps a lot to go to someone. Sometimes that would be an occupational therapist, just to get to know their sensory profile. That helps also to make the shift in your head, and also know your sensory profile. Because once you know what the sensory profile is like, it's easier to make the necessary adaptations while you're learning. You just all of a sudden understand why this child needs to move, why this child needs to bite his pencil, why he needs to be upside down, why a page of math is visually too overstimulating. And then you as a mom, you would make the time to find the right font size, font type, even just page layout. Maybe you need to enlarge it. It's got nothing to do with vision, but just the ability to minimalize it for your child. One of my sons loves it to finish off his work, and then now the rest of the day I can do, we call it productive free time. We can do our productive free time. He likes to get it off his back. But the other one, he wants his breaks in between. So we incorporate it. Otherwise, it's totally overwhelming. It will probably lead to a meltdown, and we will lose the rest of the day, and it will injure our relationship. So also, you get to work at the ability of the child, not at the age. You know what they found? That children of the same age, average ability, can be 5 years. There can be a 5-year difference in brain maturation. Sure. Imagine that. So we because we are products of school, we tend to think, a grade 4 child should be able to do this. It was so liberating for me to make that disconnect and just, okay, where are you, my son? Where did we stop? Where are we going to continue? Where do we have to pause? It's so liberating. And then time to talk. Time to talk is not only for relationship. You know what? You're teaching them how to think. And I think we said this before, that it's sometimes difficult for some people just to get the talking juices going. So what might be a good idea is just start asking questions. And start with the W questions: where, when, woo. Okay, and then you can carry on to the how questions. That's a step up. And then you can even go further to your why questions, because then you're really getting into the causal thinking of almost that trial and error. What's the cause of this? So you want to get there, okay, and not just stopping there. Yeah, with your older children, going to comparative thinking, comparing things, carrying on to grey area thinking. You know what? We have a lot of polarized thinkers around. Adults thinking in black and white. It's either wrong or right. But compared to how I felt last week, how do I feel this week? Compared to how happy I am about this gift. Is it a 9? Is it a 2 happiness? Just having that grey area thinking, differentiated thinking. And also, I think for the teenagers, being able to reflect, starting to reflect on my own behaviour. You know, having your child being able to come back to you and say, I thought about what happened, I'm sorry, I was out of line, I was disrespectful. And you can just imagine how many adults can really have more practice in that area. So that's what you try to do with thinking. You know what, we can't have memory-based learning anymore. It's thinking-based learning. Because now we don't know what our children need within 10 years. You know, and all the information are actually quite accessible if you know how to get to that.
Yeah, if you know which questions to ask.
Yes, but that's the thing. The thing is, do you know how to think? And that's why Ruben Feuerstein said, if we test a child's IQ, we shouldn't look at what is the content, how much information is in there, but the ability to learn.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what we're actually trying to do, to get the discussion going. Even if it's in just spurts in the beginning, it's also something, have grace with the process. Just start with small conversation. They're not used to you wanting to have a conversation with them. Just get used to it, and also have grace with yourself if it's a bit difficult to get it going. Not all of the moms and dads are as easy with communication.
Yeah, and that's where read alouds also help, because you can discuss what was read in the story, and again starting with the what, where, when, and then moving on to the how and the why. So yeah.
But books often take a lot of time, so maybe it's today, a winter day, and you just do a movie. In 2 hours you almost get through a book, and you can talk about the characters afterwards, and why my second oldest always loved the underdog or the dodgy character, and we had a conversation about why did you like that character, and often I was so surprised with the emotional bit that came through, just discussing that. So you almost get into a habit of, you would sit somewhere and you think, I have to discuss this with my child. We have to talk about this later on. Everything. And you know what? It just opens up your own mind.
Yeah, and learning to respect other people's opinion and point of view.
So true.
And what you said about the grey areas is that we're not all black and white. We need to allow for other people's thinking.
Or how children react on when you're later on in puberty, the way children react to you. It might have been that child's just having a bad day, but they can reflect on that. It's not straight away, they don't like me, or, they can reflect on thinking and not be polarized, not go into that almost fight and flight loop straight away. Just taking a step back, thinking about my thoughts. It's a lot of practice. Practice, so.
In a conversation you and I had, you mentioned finding the gold in the mediocre, in the everyday situation. Can you maybe tell us more about that?
I think the most magical moments usually for us is in the mediocre, because you didn't see it coming and you didn't plan for it, and it's usually an idea that they come up with and you just expand on the idea, and it's just what would that be? We drove the other day, and just to switch off the radio, and I just put one of the books. It was a book with questions. I just put it on the back seat. I know my eldest would sit there, and he just started paging through the book, and he said, "Do you guys know where Coca-Cola started?" And we had this lovely conversation for 40 kilometers about this. That would be a mediocre thing. You're just paging through something. Sometimes I would buy them something, hide it, and then on a certain morning just put it on the table, say nothing. And it's mediocre, it's something simple, and it gets the conversation going. So really, I never underestimate that. This morning I thought, if I was on an island, it would actually be easier for me, because there's gold in mediocre things, just, digging a hole or trying to get the fire going, and that's where you get the problem-solving ideas going. I think for me and for our setup, it's actually more difficult having, it's a benefit, and having so much resources available, it's almost difficult to find that really important thing that got the juices and the thinking processes going. So I think while I'm washing the dishes, don't underestimate the usual, not the usual, but the everyday activities. So I think instead of, I often hear just use what you have. Use what you have. And also for them to become thinkers like that. We shouldn't chase after every new ideology, if you understand what I'm saying, but use what's around you. But that's also almost still art as well, to get into that, just to see the gold in the mediocre things.
I want to ask you about what specific advice can you offer for a parent who thinks their child has a special need. You addressed some of it right in the beginning, but maybe just go over it again.
Yeah, I think a good place to start would be to know your child's sensory system, because you get sensory processing disorders. It's escalating. You see it in your spectrum disorders, in your ADD, your ADHD, in your developmental disorders. There's just sensory processing disorders everywhere, and I've got a hunch that it's because of not enough play. So the fast pace, that's the other thing for sensory processing disorders. There's a vast amount of reasons. A good place to start for a parent with sensory with a child with special needs would be to start off with getting information about your child's sensory profile, and maybe your own. Just start with that, and you will soon enough realize what's the sensory profile for the siblings and your husband, and it just makes sense for a good sensory fit. But not to stop there. That's what I'm so scared of. Parents often give it over to a speciality or to a professional, and they stop there. So now the professional's in the driver's seat. And I think the mom and the dad should stay in the driver's seat, because you know your child best. So you can actually give that professional the best idea of what a sensory day would look like for your child. So for me, it entailed I actually had to become like an investigator, to investigate what's the things that trigger my child, what would cause the meltdown. And often it takes a lot of time to go and figure out, okay, that's what happened, just to connect the dots. So that's where you need that time to observe, that time to stand back. Maybe you need that information in the beginning about his sensory profile, but then once you go home, back to daily life, you can start to connect the dots. Investigate all aspects of his day and of his functioning. The reading, the writing problem, the math problem, the obvious problem is often the tip of the iceberg. So you have to go and investigate, look at the way he's tying his shoes, look at the sleep cycle, look at the diet. You have to look at the look at the family. Is there maybe one of the siblings causing triggers, which causes meltdowns? And then, very important, your own anxiety. The thing is, with children, they mirror the parent. So they actually did this lovely study where babies crawl along a surface, and then at a certain stage the surface became see-through. So what the babies did, they crawl along, and when they were unsure, once the see-through surface started, they would look up, look at mom. If mom was smiling, they would continue. If mom was reacting with any fear, they would stop right there. So children mirror you. So any fear, anxiety, maybe anxiety about your child's future, not your child not developing the way you think he should be, by now, compared to his age, like we do, like we shouldn't do. And you get anxious about that. It's contagious. They pick up on it. But the lovely thing is, calm is also contagious. But it's just checking yourself for that, the anxiety. We would realize that my husband would just look in a certain way at my son, and I wouldn't even see the trigger. But it was enough for him to know that dad's not happy, and that would cause a meltdown. Learn to see things from your child's perspective, and that's where the sensory profile really comes in handy. Once you understand, there's a reason why you need to be upside down. It's not just you trying to be a monkey and trying to spoil my lesson.
Yes.
You need that to feel better. It's just easier once you see it from their perspective to make the necessary changes. Identify their strengths and weaknesses. Now I've been working with children for very long, and there's almost always strengths and there's almost always weaknesses. So spend time, know what they are, work on your weaknesses, build your strengths. Get to know your fellow homeschoolers, homeschooling community, talk. The last couple of weeks, months, I've been visiting parents with special needs kids, and you know what? Every time I walked away with so much wisdom, and things I thought, I've got this background and all that, there's wisdom always in that. So don't deny, speak out, get help, share what works. I think people, they need that so terribly bad, because often special needs parents tends to be isolated. So not a good place to be. But most important is relationship. So if the relationship is severed, stop everything and salvage that. That's your, you think, oh goodness, I'm falling behind with this and the therapy, maybe the home program and all that. You are building the bridge that you need to make contact with this child. So everything starts with the relationship.
I wanted to ask you, how protective should a parent be with a child with special needs?
I think with homeschool parents, we tend to micromanage. We almost we don't tend to micromanage, but we can easily fall into the trap of micromanaging our children's social life and work and time and everything. You can micromanage it. What you're actually doing, you're taking away control, and that's one of the major stressors for any organism, for any human being, is the feeling of not having control. So I think that is so important, is giving back the control to the child, trusting that they can make choices, and that's where play comes in, because that's actually where the child, that's the one place in their life where they have control over what they're doing. So that's where the importance of play comes back in to what we're doing with our children. So I think with overprotection, it really stems from a place of our own anxiety, trying to control. Once we realize that, trusting, giving back the control. And once, even if it's in little spurts in the beginning, we don't want to make uninformed decisions or make radical changes, giving them life-threatening choices, things that can be dangerous. But giving them that choice, even if it's just in the little things in the beginning, and trusting that choice will actually, it's an antidote for stress. Either way. So yeah, overprotection, it's just translating in over-controlling, taking control away. Yeah, never a good idea.
Good. Thank you very much for all the practical advice. I'm looking forward to our next session.